your engine! Here we have a hybrid car that's making a noise. Let's pray it's not something expensive. So we drive down the road. You can hear that noise, and as far as I can tell, it's coming from the back. Sounds kind of like a wheel bearing, right rear, something in the back. Faster you go, the faster the boom, 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 boom. So we'll pull in the driveway, jack it up and check it out. Now unfortunately this is a hybrid, but it's also all-wheel drive. There's front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive, and the noise seems to be coming from back here. So we'll check this first. Now unfortunately I can't run the thing to listen to it while it's here on the ground because this is all-wheel drive and the front wheels would be spinning. So this is more of a pain than a normal car. If it was just rear-wheel drive, we could have jacked it up, run it and listened. Well, we can't do that because it's all-wheel drive. So we're going to check it mechanically first with our hands. See if it's got any play. No play at all. Nothing wrong with the bearing on the axle. Totally smooth. But I can hear a noise coming from the inside. Now, as you can see on this vehicle, it's got some mileage on it. It's got 168,000 miles on it. Now, the owner of this Highlander had a Highlander before this that he had 368,000 miles on it. Still ran fine, but it was a V6 conventional. It was not a hybrid. The problem with this baby is it's a hybrid. This is the reason I tell you not to buy hybrids when they get old. As I spin the tire, the noise is coming from inside the differential. But this isn't just any differential. This is a hybrid differential. When we look under the hood, it does have a regular engine. You can hear the electronics going on. They're always going on these things. But it also has hybrid synergy drive. On a normal car, if it was rear-wheel drive, you'd have the engine in the front, drive shaft, then it would go to the differential. The differential takes the power from the transmission and spins the rear wheels. Well, this baby also has a hybrid differential. When we go under the car and look at the differential, here's a differential, but it's run by electric motors. If you look in front of it, you'll see there's no drive shaft that connects this differential to the wheels. Now, the main power is the engine that sends power from the gasoline engine to the front wheels and drives the front. That back differential's an add-on to get extra power and taking off. And in this case, it's going bad. Now, I don't mess around with rigging these hybrid cars myself. Now, in the olden days, somebody had all-wheel drive Jeeps. Let's say the front broke, but the back still drove. We'd just take the drive shafts off the front and then you could drive it with just rear-wheel drive. I'm assuming you could disconnect the electronics to this thing or take the drive shafts off if you really wanted and just drive it on the front. But then it wouldn't have much horsepower, wouldn't ride the same, wouldn't have the same safety features. So I'm not going to mess with that. If it's your car and you want to fool around with it, go right ahead. And then if it works, tell Scotty. I'd love to get some feedback from people about how you can fix it cheaper if you don't want to spend the $2,500 up to replace the entire electronic differential and reprogram it. You could disconnect it if you wanted to, but I called around a zillion places. The Toyota dealer doesn't fix them. They just replace them. And I called my rear end and standard transmission dudes and they said, we wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. It's an electronic differential. We work on mechanical hydraulic ones. We don't work on electronic ones. And let's face it, even if you found an electronics expert who said, I'll work on it, where the heck is he going to get parts for it? I looked around, I couldn't even find places that sell parts for the stupid things. So even if he figured out what was wrong, if he can't get parts, he's not going to be able to fix it. Really, the best bet would be to try to find a late model wrecked one and take it off and just install the entire rear differential electronic motor assembly as a unit. Toyota's going to do that, only they're going to do it with a brand new unit. It's going to cost you at least $2,500. And this is yet another reason that I warn people against buying used hybrid vehicles. The parts are expensive. Often you can't even get parts to fix stuff. You have to replace whole units like this whole electronic differential unit. Big money repairs. And without the hybrid, it puts out 206 horsepower. So it will still run. I mean, it's a lot less than with the hybrid, but certainly it would run better than a Toyota Prius if you lost the electric hybrid part, because the Toyota Prius, most of those have less than 100 horsepower in the gasoline engine. This gasoline engine still puts out 207 horsepower. So if you wanted to do a little experimentation, you could pull the drive shafts off the back and run it as a front wheel drive only vehicle. Mind you, you'd have all kinds of bells and whistles, warning light coming on because it would know the back wasn't working right, and you'd have to live with that crap. But you could theoretically drive it that way and not spend $2,500 up fixing the back. And truthfully, the customer's driving it this way for over a year. Now, it's getting progressively louder. The problem with leaving it is, that's the differential. Let's say it finally breaks physically. It could lock up, and then the rear wheels would lock up. Very dangerous thing. I would either take the drive shafts off or I'd get rid of the car myself. I wouldn't drive it much longer the way it is, because eventually if that thing does break and lock up, that's extremely dangerous. To me, it's just a shame that such a nice vehicle has it breaking down. Now, yeah, it's got some mileage on it, but like I said, his previous one had like 350,000 more miles on it, with a V6 just normal, no hybrid drive, and yeah, it got worse gas mileage, but it went a lot further than this thing. You're talking about another 200,000 miles, and it still ran like a clock and didn't make any noise. So as for old Scotty here, Mr. Cheapskate, that's why I don't mess with hybrid cars myself. I would never buy one. I don't want to spend that kind of money on repairs. Just look at the difference with my customer. His previous Highlander had over 350. This one breaking at 150. 200,000 miles less. And the other one still hadn't broken. Be leery of these hybrids, ones like these that are all-wheel drive. As with any all-wheel drive vehicle, you're going to pay more. They cost more to make, they weigh more, they have more friction, so they also get worse gas mileage. Unless you absolutely positively have one because you live where there's ice and snow all the time, stay away from all-wheel drive vehicles if you value your money. Because if you keep them long enough like I do, they'll bite you in the rear end and you'll spend a lot of money. Plus, you'll spend a lot more on gas because there's more friction, more weight, gets worse gas mileage. Well, at least I figured out what was wrong with it. Customer can now make a decision what he wants to do with it. I'm sure he didn't want to spend $2,500 on it. 12 years old, who'd want to spend that kind of money on a 12-year-old car? And some people would be happy to get 150,000 miles out of a car, but my customer bought this car used with over 100,000 miles on it. He broke my cardinal rule of do not buy a higher mileage hybrid car unless you really want a toy and you're getting it for nothing. I've had customers get them for $1,000, $1,500. Then what do they care? As long as they last, they're making out okay. And then when a big repair comes, they just get rid of them. Or if it was somebody else, they might just pull the drive shafts off the back and drive it as a front wheel drive only. You could do that too if you wanted to. But as I always say, if you value your money, not a smart idea buying a used hybrid that's older and has a lot of miles on it. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Hot Cheetos says, Scotty, what do you think of an 04 Xterra? Well, I'm not a Nissan fan, but back in 04, those were decent vehicles. I made a video on one a few weeks ago. Customer had one, still ran pretty good. If you take care of them, change the oil, back in the day, 2004, they were pretty decent vehicles. That was only a few years after Renault and Nissan merged, so Nissan hadn't been ruined by the cheap French quality control like it is today. So they're not bad vehicles, but on the other hand, it's an 04 Xterra. It's 17 years old and they probably got a lot of miles. Don't overpay. They don't go for that much money. They can be decent vehicles, but don't overpay. They're not worth all that much money when they're that old. Josh Hughes says, my Dodge Neon XXT automatic won't go into reverse. Well, pray. Transmission cable, when you put it in gear, the cable goes to the transmission and changes the gears with the shift arm, right? Pray that's stretched and it needs a new one, because if not, your transmission shot, it's a Dodge Neon, junk it. When reverse goes out and the actual gear is broken and you can go forwards but not reverse, you have to rebuild the whole transmission. That is a pretty complex front-wheel drive transmission. It's also very poorly made. It was made in Mexico. It would be probably 4 times the value of the car rebuilding that transmission. So I had a guy with one once. He just would park it. It's a small car, so he never had to back out. If he ever got stuck where he did have to back out, he'd have his friends push to get it backwards and go forwards. And he drove it 4 or 5 years. Eventually, the reverse gear broke off, fell in the transmission. It wouldn't even go forward, and then he junked it. So you might think about that rather than putting money into the stupid thing, because they're not worth anything. Biscuit9 says, Scotty, what do you think of a 2009 Suzuki SX4 low mileage all-wheel drive? If you're in the United States, you're foolhardy to buy any of their car products, even the truck products, because they pulled out of the United States a while ago and they were horrible to get parts for even when they were here. In other parts of the world, they can be okay because they have parts, guys know how to work on, but in the United States, I mean, if you can get it for practically nothing and you want a toy for the weekends to fiddle around with, go right ahead, you know? But don't pay hardly anything for it because they're worth absolutely nothing in the United States. The dealership pulled out. And it's such an odd company because they make absolute killer screaming motorcycles. I had a Suzuki 750. That was a screaming motorcycle. But their cars, they're pretty much garbage in the United States. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.